women may be psychopaths than previously thought, says expert. Who's surprised by this? I'm not. For years now, I've been going through things like the Duluth model of domestic violence or abuse, whatever they call it. All the stuff on that Duluth model is like behavior that your average woman has. But it only counts as abuse when a man does it to a woman. When a woman does it to a man or another woman, they just ignore it. Oh, she's just being temperamental. Don't mind her. How bad must things be for even the so-called experts to start admitting, like, yeah, what we've been writing off as normal female behavior for years is kind of a sign of psychopathy, and maybe we should take it seriously? So Dr. Clive Body says assessments skew towards obvious male traits, but female psychopathy is more subtle. What are you talking about? Like when a man is diagnosed for being a psychopath, it's usually because he exhibits female traits. And yet when women do those same things, they just, oh, those are just female traits. That's just normal. So when it comes to a typical psychopath, the suited and booted Patrick Bateman from the novel American Psycho might spring to mind. But according to one expert, the number of women with a neuropsychiatric disorder may be far greater than previously thought. Any man could have told you that, especially any man who's been married. So psychopaths are generally considered to lack empathy and guilt. That you just described the woke in general. Exhibit antisocial behavior, lie frequently, and be ruthless, narcissistic, and manipulative. Those are traits that don't those don't describe any woman at all. Nope. Now, psychopaths are after money, power, and control. That doesn't describe any woman at all. Nope. So while the idea of psychopaths as violent antisocial criminals has given way to a more nuanced view, with a body among those to argue they are more often found in big businesses. Yes. The psychopaths are the ones that rise to the top because they know how to game the system. They don't feel guilty about crushing others underneath their boots. That's why they make it to the top. There we go. The idea that they are mostly male has remained. Yeah, that's just bias. That is just pure bias right there. When men exhibit female traits, they're labeled as psychopaths. When women act the same way, crickets. The behavior of female psychopaths seems to be subtle enough and less obvious than male psychopaths, and therefore they're not recognized as much, Body said. I disagree. The reason you don't recognize them as much is because you're going out of your way to not see them, to make excuses for them. Maybe if you stopped doing that. So a small but mounting body of evidence describes female psychopaths as prone to expressing violence verbally rather than physically. They do it physically as well. It's just that they understand the law. They know they'll get in trouble if they push their luck. And with violence being of a relational and emotional nature, more subtle and less obvious than those expressed by male psychopaths. No, so most male psychopaths actually they know how to game the system. You're not going to get very much actual reactions out of them like this because they'd get in trouble. Like no, they'll take care of you in different ways. When the eye of Big Brother isn't on them. So adding that that may include spreading rumors and lies for personal advantage. This is finally being recognized as bad behavior. What took so long? The Body said one problem was part of an assessment used to help identify psychopathic traits known as the Levinson Self-Report Psychopathy Scale was skewed towards men. That, he said, was because while the first part of the assessment looked at how emotionally detached, selfish, uncaring, manipulative person was, the second part, which was covered the psychopathic lifestyle, focused on violence and antisocial behavior. The secondary element and the measures of it were largely based on studies of criminals who were in jail at the time and psychopathic. So the feeling is among researchers these days that those measures are not suited to identifying female psychopathy. Well, look in the female jails too. There have also been fewer studies looking at psychopathy in whammons than in men, he said, and the assessors may be reluctant to label whammons as psychopaths. Well, thank you. Yes, there is bias there. They might be getting manipulated and blackmailed too. Some estimates have suggested there could be a 10-to-1 ratio of male to female psychopaths, but Bai's work using only the first part of the LSRP suggested the figures are very different. I'd say it's at least 1-to-1. If you do not believe that there's at least as many female psychopaths out there as male, you're delusional. Yeah, it's almost 1-to-1. But I said, although he noted large-scale studies of randomly chosen adults would be needed to get a more definitive picture. At least they're talking about it now. Although something tells me if they were to do a study like this, I wonder if it wouldn't just get buried. That's generally what happens when these studies come up with results they don't like. Body, who was due to give a talk on female psychopaths at the Cambridge Festival next month, said that while an estimated 1% of men were psychopaths, the diagnosis sat on one end of a spectrum. Estimates using the first part of the LSR suggest there are about 23% of men who, although they're not categorically psychopath, have enough of the traits to be problematic for society. Body's own research, based on surveys of white-collar workers, suggests such traits were not uncommon in females. Around 12 to 13% of females had enough of those traits to be potentially problematic. Try adding a 0 to the end of that. Yeah, over 100%. The recognizing psychopathy in whammons and men was important, Body said, not at least because such individuals could have a huge impact on the workplace with employees sidelined, abused, and bullied. In addition, he noted businesses led by such individuals could lose direction, and it could affect how people viewed large organizations. That's already happened. This is one of the reasons why people really are fighting for working from home. They're fighting for remote work. They really don't like hanging out with all the psychopaths in the office. They see the greed, untruthfulness, and ruthlessness of those at the top, and this undermines democracy and the rule of law. In the end, yeah. As people walk away, like when the wage slave class decides to give up, that's when things get fun. Body advocated for screening to be applied to job applicants to help protect employees. Okay, now this could backfire spectacularly, especially the higher up you go in terms of seniority. Therefore, you have more power and control. The more of those sorts of screening tests and psychometric tests are needed, he said. The higher levels are exactly where these tests aren't going to happen. Now, I've mentioned the story before about how the IT department at one company I worked at, they used to send out like fake phishing emails, and anyone who fell for it was forced to go through some extra security training. But they stopped doing that because most of those falling for it happened to be high-level executives. And they're not going to waste their time with something like that. Yeah, even though they're primary like juicy targets for this stuff. Yeah, they can't be bothered. So the same thing's going to be here. Yeah, those at the top, they know they're psychopaths. They're not going to want to give up this power. So I wouldn't hold my breath about this. The real thing is they're finally starting to admit that women are crazy. I never thought we'd get here in my lifetime, especially pre-collapse, but here we are, man. I guess miracles do happen.